Hello again. In this video, I'm going to show how to consolidate output data. So in many ways, this video is a complement to the video showing the meaning of the absolute time value option. The reason why is because after using that option, one would typically have a data set, an output data set that looks like the following. You can see this one here has the country code indicator, the year indicator. In this particular case, I was interested in yield data for government bonds. And as you can see, hence in the video on the consolidation option, it shows different yield values for the same year. But of course, as we illustrated in that video, when you select the absolute time value, it will actually tell you the true time unit corresponding to this value. So in this case, even though the year says 1950, the actual time value is January 5th, 1950. And what you can tell is that this is weekly data. There are 50, in this case here, 53 observations. Or actually 52 observations, hence 52 weeks out of the year, for the yield data. Now at this point, though this data might be useful, a lot of times scholars are interested in using data of this sort to conduct analysis where the time unit is the year. And so what that means is that one would have to take these data here and convert it into annual data. Now there are a lot of ways to do this. I, for example, would commonly take this data set over to, say, Stata or R, and one could write a loop that would consolidate. Say, for example, take the average value of the yields for every week to give kind of an average value for the year, or you could do the maximum value for the year, whatever it might be that would be of interest to you as the analyst. But what I want to show in this video is a simple command in Excel that will allow you to consolidate this information. And this can be done in the following steps. So let's say that what you as the researcher are ultimately interested in is having annual bond yield data for each country. Well, the way to be able to create this out of the output data from NewGene is to go ahead and start by copying the country code column and the year column. And let's go over to column H, for example, and let's go ahead and paste those columns here. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to use this to be able to create a list of every country in our data set and each year for that country. The way to do that is to go up to the Data tab and go to the Remove Duplicates option. You can see here it's going to allow you to remove the duplicate values for country code and year. If we select OK, it tells us how many duplicated values were removed. And what you can see is now we have an actual country year listing. Country 2 for year 1950, country 2 for 1951, country 20 for 1950, country 20 for 1951, on down the list. At this point, we now have a list of countries and years that we can use to obtain our annual yield data. And to do this, we're going to use the command called average if S. And the S is very important because the S specifies that this is for multiple criteria. So we use it as follows. We type equal average IFS. Now the first thing you'll have to enter is the average range. So this is the column of data that are used to actually compute this is the column of data for which you're actually drawing the values. In this case, it would be the yield column. Now we're going to use the $ to indicate that we want to keep this listing the same throughout. So $C, $2. We're going to start at cell 2, row 2 of column C. Then $C, $, and as it turns out, I won't go down to the bottom of the list, but this list ends at cell 956. Okay, so that is the range of the values for which we're actually going to be computing the average. Next, we have our criteria range. Now in this case, there's 2 criteria. We're going to be using country code first, then we're going to be using the year. So we're going to start with the first criteria range. In this case, it's going to be the year. So that is going to be A to through A 956. Next, it's going to ask for the actual criteria. In this case, we would enter this cell here, H2, because that tells us we want to pull identifier, we want to identify where this C code appears in the column A. So we type H2. Now we can move to our second criteria. Our second criteria is going to be the year. So in this case, the year is of course in column B. So we're going to do B, $B, 2, $B, 956. And then again, criteria is going to be column I. And so here is going to be I2. So at this point, we've now specified our criteria. And as you can see by looking at the formulas, kind of helpful, useful tip for indicating what formula criteria are needed. You can see that this can go on and on. If you have multiple ranges, you have, say, country, leader, year, or something, if that's what you've outputted from NewGene, you could use this command to create those type of averages. But here we just have country year, so that's all we're going to use. Now we can close it with the parenthesis. We hit enter, and as you can see, it is now given us this value of 2.31856. Now to check to make sure that that's the actual value, we can just use the regular average command and say, go here, over to column C. We're just going to average all the values for country 2 in the year 1950, go all the way down to here. You can see that goes from C2 to C53, hit enter, and you can see that gives us the exact same answer. So we've been able to check our work. The average if-s command does appear to be working properly. And so at this point, we can just simply copy this all the way down. And now we have our list of yields, average yields per year by country. And so this is a way to take this daily data, or it could be weekly. In this case here, it's data indicated by the day, but it's actually weekly data. But you could take weekly data, monthly data, quarterly data, and this is a way that you can aggregate it up to yearly data. Now, the reason this feature is not included within NewGene itself is because we, as the providers of the software, aren't exactly sure how an analyst would want to use the data. And so we're simply providing the data as it would appear in the data set, but the purpose of this video is to then help the analysts, if they wish, to be able to consolidate it into something that might be more useful for their research question. Thank you.